Hey guys, this is the Villain Report. I'm trying to create interviews with people across the spectrum of beliefs and political viewpoints and religious viewpoints and just get people to start talking to people that they don't necessarily agree with. So I want to interview as many people as possibly. This is Tara. I cannot say her last name. She
Hi,
is actually
everyone.
a certified beauty queen. Where did you get your beauty queen title from?
So actually, I have my Miss America crowns in the background. So my first title in the Miss America system was Miss Miami, and I've held four titles in the Miss America system, and then also ventured out to try other systems like Miss USA, formerly owned by Donald Trump, and have represented the USA actually at three international competitions in China, in Malaysia, and also
We have been having technical difficulties like crazy, and I'm losing Tara's connection right now. So, as I was saying, Tara is a multiple certified beauty queen, like legit beauty queen. She has since moved from the beauty queen world into the in real life news reporting, live streaming kind of thing. Um, she's had a couple of scuffles with Antifa. And she is trying to show what's happening across the country in the way that the mainstream media isn't. I first met Tara, and I think this is the first time I met you, I think it was December 12th of 2020. We were in DC. I happened to stumble across you and a group of other live streamers. Some of those people were, in my opinion, very insane. The long hair blonde guy and the beautiful blonde boy was one of the most insane people I've ever met.
Wooza. Yeah, it was Wooza and I think Chicken Andy. I remember walking with that crew. And then
Yeah,
that's where I had met you. Exactly. It's
and then
almost our
we,
year anniversary.
yeah, a couple days, huh?
Yeah.
So we ended up walking, and I started getting bad vibes from that crew. Not necessarily from you, but the energy in that crew was just like we're gonna cause some shit and film it. And there ended up, I'm not sure if it was you or Taylor Hanson that had the Black Lives Matter flag and burnt it in front of that hotel.
Mhm.
That really disturbed me. Not the fact that it was some kind of sensational stunt act to do that, but the police's response to that really disturbed me because we've seen throughout the country in DC and in many other places throughout the last 4 or 5 years people just burning American flags in public,
Mhm.
and police just stand by and watch it. But man, that Black Lives Matter flag got burnt, and the police jumped in and started pushing people and started intimidating people, and they were there on a second. They stomped out the fire, and I live stream it. Like if you guys want to go, you can find live stream. I'm not sure. I don't label them very well, so you'd have to find it. But I was disturbed in that live stream by the police response to that. Like they acted like there was an act of treason being committed,
Mhm.
and I was like,
Well,
wait a second, you
villain,
guys don't do this.
that was actually the exact reason why Taylor Hanson and I had burned the flag, BLM flag. It was to be protesting back because when you think again to how many American flags have been burnt, especially in 2020 in the form of protest. Now, I strongly disagree with the burning of an American flag. I find that very also disturbing, but at the same time, like the counter of that is burning now a BLM flag because BLM is the antithesis of America. And that was part of the reason why we were standing up against BLM that day. And why we also burnt the BLM flag. And that had happened the month later in January. So that was Taylor Hanson and I in front of the Willard Hotel. But your reaction to and why you find that disturbing with the police's reaction is also part of the reason why we burned the BLM flag.
Yeah, yeah. And if you guys haven't seen that video, I'm gonna be too lazy. I'm not gonna link it, but you can go through my videos and look at it if you want. It's January 12th, I believe, 2020, and it is disturbing how quickly and how aggressive the police came in and how they treated everybody, and they started pushing people and being just like intimidating people. It was unexpected.
Throughout this
Anyway,
past throughout this past year, when I've been at various protests and I've seen the American flag being burned, it's at larger protests than the amount of people that were even present at the time that Taylor and I had burned the BLM flag. You don't see police intervening when it comes to the American flag. So that's the issue now that we're facing with a double standard as to what it can, what can be not criminalized, because there's no action that was taken against us for burning the BLM flag, though we have seen in the case of Enrique Tarrio when the case where the burning of the BLM flag, that also was very politicized in the sentencing that he received for having to serve 5 months for the crime of burning a BLM flag, which it is a protected action. Like burning the American flag, burning a flag is a protected action under the First Amendment freedom of speech.
The double standards is weird. I don't want to go down the Enrique Tarrio route because there's some confusing, questionable circumstances around that guy that is causing a lot of curiosity and controversy. But I want to get to know you, and I want to talk to you. So what caused you to go from doing the beauty queen circuit and living that life of rubbing shoulders and glamour and winning like beauty contests and like shoving it in the other women's faces like, I won, to going, the last time I saw you in person, I believe, was the Battle of Portland 3 on the east side of Portland, where Antifa was throwing IEDs at people and covering people with glue, spray paint, fire cannons, and you were there in the fray. Like, what made you go from the beauty queen life to guerrilla journalist?
Well, it's been an interesting whirlwind. So I'm a former liberal, and I've been raised Democrat my entire life. And then after like just an ounce of looking into what was going on, like I asked my dad, why were we Democrat? Why were we always like, I just voted straight down, like, oh, Democrat candidate, vote that way. Cause we thought they were the good guys and we weren't very political, and we didn't look too much into it. And then, so, when you're just stuck on looking at the mainstream media and not even doing that much research, you just see what the titles are out there, headlines. And then when you base your information on that, of course, you're going to be led down the narrative. And then, so for me, actually, so I used to work in the corporate world. I used to do management consulting. And so I had done pageantry. And then after I got my master's in management and systems, and then I have a first master's in communications. So now I'm reverting back to my original passion with journalism. But I was backpacking the world for about 2 years, and I'd come back from being abroad for almost 11 months straight. I got back the day before they announced it as a pandemic, remember March 12th. And then so this made me sit down, and I stay still and pay attention to what was going on in America. And then that's when the Floyd riots and BLM riots started up in America. And I just saw like all this destruction that was going on. And my first thought was like, this is a domestic terrorist organization if they're going to be burning and looting our streets and causing such havoc for a message. Like, to me, that's domestic terrorism. And so I just posted on my social media, just on my Facebook, calling them a domestic terrorist organization. And the backlash that I received from that, I thought, that I must have like said the worst thing in the world. And even in that statement, I said all lives matter, not knowing that was then considered the counter to Black Lives Matter. But how dare I go against the narrative? So basically, it wasn't that conservatives or Republicans or patriots like pulled me into that side of the spectrum. It was more so my own like liberal crowd pushed me out, because anytime I had an opinion, like I was not allowed to have an opinion. The way that we're going to be progressing as a society is through this civil discourse. So, Villain, what you're trying to do, engaging with people of different perspectives, it's about talking through those ideas and allowing the best ideas to rise to the top. You're not shutting down a person who has the countervailing view. And so that's what we're experiencing now. And so how I went down my own rabbit hole was with paying attention to what was going on in the news. And then I started going out and seeing the events that were on the news and realizing, wow, this is so different of what I'm witnessing now as a bystander versus what I'm seeing on the news. And I just started filming with my camera, with my cell phone at first, and started going to the protests and seeing and with that is where what has led me now to finding where patriot rallies are going on, or BLM. I've been to several BLM protests as well, and just going to where these battleground areas are and then reporting to them from a citizen standpoint. And I think it's really important because like you're not going to get this kind of information from the mainstream media, and that's why the rise of citizen journalism is so important, and why I've been also encouraging anybody to take out their cameras and or their cell phones. Everybody has a cell phone to then record and post that information out there, because we need to get the truth out.
Yeah. One thing that I've been trying to encourage people to do is if you're a person that watches the news, like the TV news, like you sit down on your couch and watch the TV and 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock and watch the TV news, when you see something that's happening somewhat close to your house, whether it be a fire or a police action that's closing down a neighborhood, or a weather incident that they're reporting live from, get off your couch and go to the address that they're reporting from. Go look at what they're reporting and then compare it to the TV show that they made for you. And you ask yourself, think for yourself, did what you see for yourself with your own eyes match what they put on the TV? I guarantee you it will disturb you. I got into this kind of the same way you did, Tara. Like, I was living downtown Portland when the George Floyd riots broke out, and I knew there was going to be riots breaking out because I had went to a political speech a couple days before, and Joanna Hardesty was giving a speech at the federal park in front of the Justice Center, and I was listening to her. I was like, she's calling for violence. Like, she's not saying it, but that's what she's doing. She's calling for people to riot. And sure enough, it was either that Friday or that Saturday night. I dressed up like Antifa. I've always kind of been like a punk, and I like black, so I had the wardrobe already. And I went out with my camera and I filmed it that first night, and I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I didn't even look at the TV. I was like, sure enough, like everybody's going to see this and they're going to uprise. And we're going to put a quash to this. And the next night, I dressed up like a hobo. I put like some beat up construction clothes on and like a winter
You got
beanie.
clever with your disguises.
Yeah. And I put a backpack on. I put a wool blanket in my backpack. And my plan was, this is pretty funny. My plan was to, if the riot police came in and kettled an area, I was going to duck into the alcove, like the entryway of a business, and lay down, put my head on the backpack, and throw the blanket over me real quick, and just pretend like I was a bum. Tara, I'm not joking you. That happened. The police kettled the area. I jumped into an alcove. I laid my head on the backpack, threw the blanket over me, and the police went by me. They looked me straight in the eye and they kept walking by. And I was like, oh my goodness, it worked. I only wish I could have like set some cameras up beforehand.
Oh my God.
But, it worked.
I'm gonna add the homeless look is gonna go into my repertoire of disguises. Thank you, Villain, for that. That's a fantastic idea.
You're gonna have a little bit harder time like poshing down than I am. But
I think that I've put on wigs before to go out to I remember it was on Floyd's the 1 year anniversary of Floyd's death. When they were having a lot of memorials. So I was cautious about going out and videoing that day. So I did put on a wig and dress very differently, put on glasses and everything. Because as you had mentioned, I've had some skirmishes when it comes to Antifa. So I'm not looking to become the news. I'm just there to capture it.
You gotta get those disguises going. I'm kind of tired of the whole anonymous thing, but it's got its benefits though. But when I finally did look at the news that weekend when all those riots were breaking out in Portland, and Minnesota had already been happening for about a week, and they were starting across the country. I'm trying to think of like a more powerful word. I don't know how to like express how intensely it affected me. When I saw the news was just it wasn't incompetence. It was the only way to explain what I was seeing on the news was flat out propaganda and lying.
Hmm.
There was no other way for them to be presenting what they were presenting compared to what I had seen firsthand, and it just blew my mind. I was just like, how many lies have I believed for how many years of my life? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It was that feeling that I had when I realized like the media was lying to me. I just went out there in a sense, like my own revenge was going out there and reporting the truth,
yeah,
was to combat the lies of the media. But absolutely, and now I think back even to that imagery of CNN having that headline, mostly peaceful protest with the blazing uh, buildings on fire and the background. Like I don't understand how normies can't see that and realize, wait a second, you have a whole city on fire right behind you, but you're calling it a peaceful protest.
yeah.
So absolutely, like that's great advice, I think, Villain, that to be going out there if you see something that's being reported to go and see what is actually going on. I remember I was videotaping there was a Martin Luther King Day uh protest going on in New York, just as they crossed onto the Brooklyn Bridge, and that was then also declared an unlawful assembly and a riot. I watched people like push the barricades and the police move in, and projectiles being thrown at the police. And then the next day, how it was also reported was different than what I had witnessed. But the what I also found interesting is when I was there, um, it makes me question what about like staged actors or actresses that are in these crowds. Because I was maybe 3 feet away from a woman who was just watching and then suddenly just started breaking down in tears, flailing her arms, dropped to the ground and started like screaming and crying hysterically. And then all the cameras like rushed in to cover her. And nothing had happened to her, and she's
Mm.
acting as if she was physically hurt or something, and she was just on the ground hysterically crying. And I was standing next to her when she then just started dropping to the ground and doing this. And so with all the cameras then rushing to be covering her at that moment, but nothing had happened to her. So I started wondering about all of the like stage things that were going on at these protests, like exaggerating if people were also like hurt on the protester side, for instance, because yeah, I was standing 3 feet away from this woman, perfectly fine. She's just like standing there looking at what's going on, and then to randomly start breaking down, crying as the cameras all moved to her. I was covering the outside of the Kenosha trial for Rittenhouse, and there was a woman who had a seizure, supposedly had a seizure
I
after.
saw this. Anybody like I have medical experience,
Mhm.
so I have a different perspective, but I don't understand how anybody without medical experience would have bought that for a second. It's what she had what you call it's a pseudo. She
Mhm.
had she had a case of the pseudos. It's what you call them. It's a pseudo seizure, meaning a fake seizure, meaning she's throwing a tantrum for attention. Like it was
Mhm.
so
That's
utterly
that's
obvious.
exactly what happened too. Because like I remember seeing reports afterwards that people were saying, oh, there's a woman that had a seizure following the verdict's announcement. That woman, after she was taken away by the ambulance, came back literally 20 minutes later. She drove by in a car, she started talking to everybody, and then she got out of the car after the police ushered the car to move away. She came back out and walked back into the crowd. Like this was 20 minutes after she had this seizure. And of course, like when that was going on, all cameras went to her. And so what was then reported on the media later on was about this woman having a seizure in response to such an emotional response to Rittenhouse's verdict. I'm like, she wasn't taken to the hospital. She nothing, she was taken away in the ambulance. 20 minutes later, walked right back.
Yeah.
So I knew it was staged or fake
You know what's
However,
crazy about stuff like that is that they've got no like sense of integrity
mm,
or character or humility to where they're like, I shouldn't do this. This is wrong. This will affect the people around me in a negative way. But uh, I, in the why it makes me so mad is because I'm nowhere near as crazy as that person, but I feel I'm a little bit crazy. Like I'm drawn to extreme points of view, and but I've also went through a lot of extreme stuff in the last 2 years, and it's kind of hard. It like makes me feel insane sometimes. Like, did all this stuff, did I really see? Did I really see a person get trampled to death in front of the United States Capitol, and then the Capitol Police lie about it, and then the Congress and the Senate lie about it? And did this really happen? Are they still lying about this woman's death today? And like, and it plays tricks with my mind. So this person that feels like they're going to throw a fit and have a fake seizure in front of people for intention, like it makes me mad because I question myself so much. Is like I go out and I film these events and I try to show people what's happening, and I'm no in no way like an unbiased case. I like try to show people and let them make their own mind, but I freely give my own thoughts and opinions. I'm not trying to hold my own perspective away, um, but I often fear that just by going to these events or showing these things or filming them or putting myself in those situations to where I'm gonna film this thing where nobody else is filming, that I'm causing a situation could escalate it and could cause problems. And I question that. And so when I see these motherfuckers that are throwing fits in having a fake seizure in front of the cameras or looting a Nike store and claiming that they're like trying to get their racial reparations, and they're trying to provide social justice by bashing in the windows of a Starbucks. I'm like, oh, you assholes.
you definitely got to question everything you're saying, and then everything from a critical eye. Like even another point that I want to illustrate of what I saw when I was in Kenosha was there was and this was when I was talking to another person who had witnessed this. I hadn't directly witnessed this. This happened the day before I arrived in front of the courthouse, but the there was a person who had a conceal, and somebody had spotted that this person had it concealed, so reported it to the police. So the police then came and said, we got complaints that you have conceal, and they just asked him to leave it out of the area or put it in their car or something like that. But so when the police actually moved this person like into the alleyway or away from the crowd, away from from other people, because what was happening was actually like some of the media persons were following when the police had come to approach that person, hoping to capture it on film. And it turned out that the people who were complaining to the police or filing the complaints, notifying them, were actually people, the media, and those were the people who were then following to capture the footage of the confrontation between the police and the person. So I don't know the rules. Like I heard that there was a school zone that you can't have weapons within that, or I believe a person had been arrested for that. But there was some other thing. But basically, it was the member of the media who was calling it in, and then hoping to get the footage of the police confrontation to this individual. So that's, in a sense, that is creating the news. And it was like a mainstream person also. It wasn't even an independent. I don't think anybody should do it, whether you're independent or mainstream media. I mean, you had mainstream media that was following the jurors home. And that
Yeah.
was MSN, I think, was the one
That
that
stuff
was.
is it's the same thing. Like every once in a while, you'll hear stories of firefighters
Mhm.
starting fires so that they can put them out. It's the same thing. It's just
It's like that
back then.
Nightcrawler stuff. but that's not real news. And like, so when I had the heat on me after January when it was attacked by Antifa, and I would be covering still protests, like from the BLM side, they were always looking for me, and then they would become confrontational with me. So I did cool off from going to record at the protest. Like I had every right to be there, but I did make a judgment call that I was at a point right now that I'm causing, I guess, causing the news. And I'm not
Yeah,
looking or causing the story, not the news. Though
yeah,
there was an article after one saying that I was the cause, but I deflect. I digress. But so I cooled off until they stopped kind of looking for me a little bit, and then I continued coverage of it. But because there was one BLM protest that I followed them through in front of City Hall, and I was like the only independent journalist from the conservative side. I was keeping my distance, but the crowd had stopped paying attention to the speaker and actually come over to me and started to like heckle and jar at me, that the police started to like having to protect me from them, and they moved me behind a barricade, which then also infuriated the crowd, that they're like, oh look, the police are protecting her, why are they protecting her, they wouldn't be protecting anybody else.
I think
um
I saw that video. That was in New York City.
yeah, that was in New York, and I was behind a barricade
Yeah,
and nobody's paying attention to any of the speakers because they're all focused on me with my cell phone and my selfie stick. And
yeah,
so, but after that, when the police had escorted me out through like some alleyways to get me away from the crowd and everything, and they asked me if I would be coming back next week, and my first reaction was like, "Don't tell me what to do. I have every right to be here." Because they had initially asked me to leave, and I told them no. Because as a member of the media, they can't tell you to leave. They can't tell you to stop recording.
yeah,
So when they asked me if I was going to be there next week, I thought they were telling me that I can't be there, and I just had that kind of reaction. And the guy I was talking to said, "No, I'm not telling you can't be here, but I'm just asking because if you are, we're going to have more of a police present at this
yeah,
protest." It was a weekly BLM Stonewall in protest that they had every Thursday. So what I had heard is that this one is, a calm weekly event that's held, and so the police presence is there, but also kind of in a sense minimal. And so the officer that was talking to me, he's like, "We're gonna have to increase our presence if you're here. That's why I'm asking." And
yeah.
so when he said that to me, I made a judgment call and I told him, I'm not going to be here next week. So because
Yeah,
I didn't
I
want.
don't know what your stance on at this point with police is, but at this point for me, any and all police or government employees, I do not engage with them willfully. Like, I want nothing to do with them. I've seen at so many of these events, police doing nasty things or agreeing not to do what they should be doing.
Mhm.
Um, I've been at events where I'm surrounded by Antifa and the police come up and try to make it seem like I'm the one that's a problem
Yeah.
because the Antifa's attacking me. And I just stand my ground. I'm like, no, I am not the one committing crimes.
Mhm.
These people are threatening, they're assaulting, they're threatening to assault. I'm not going to agree with you to walk me across the line. No, do do your damn job
Mhm.
and arrest those that are committing crimes and uphold the law. Don't try to take the path of least resistance
Yeah, that's
and
exactly what I was
remove
thinking.
the law-abiding citizens so that the criminals don't commit more crimes.
Exactly.
It's
That's what the 100% that they were doing. And it's something I've also experienced that since I've often been like the lone person out there against a crowd, they instead of dealing with the crowd, which in a sense would be the right thing to do, they'll choose to actually like try and physically remove me, which has happened in DC when I was filming in front of the they call it BLM Plaza, in front of that wall that they used to have the last year. But it's it is wrong for the police to be engaging the path of least resistance because they're taking the easy way out as opposed to doing what's right. But often doing what's right is not the easy thing to do. Otherwise, if it was the easy thing to do, everybody would be doing the right thing.
uh, yeah. So we've got a thing coming up, and I don't know if it's going to be a thing or if it's not going to be a thing. And I've decided I'm
Tell
not
me
going to
about
be
this
part of
thing.
it. I'm not going to be part of it no matter what. But
Mhm.
as early as I don't know, like April last year, I started hearing
Mhm.
people like sending me things, and I don't know if you have feds that contact you or people that contact you that you suspect of being feds. There's a handful of people that I'm pretty sure are feds, and they like pump me like wild information and like kind of do that thing where it's like the Fed is poking the keke with the stick, like, come on, do it domestic terrorism, do it domestic terrorism. But J6 is coming up, the anniversary of that, and I haven't seen a lot of media and stuff made up about it right now, and like videos and memes. But like 6 months ago, like man, it was like nonstop. Like J6 2 was going to be crazy. So kind of what do you think? Do you think J6 is going to happen again?
Um, I don't think J6 is what the media presents J6 to be. It was not an insurrection. If it was not a single person who has been arrested has been charged with crime of insurrection. It was not an insurrection. I remember I was streaming the. It was in September. Look Ahead America was having another rally to be talking about the political prisoners, freedom for political prisoners in front of the Capitol back in September. So I was streaming at that, and I just remember the way that the media was building up that day to be the saying that it was going to be another January 6th. The amount of police presence that was there off the bat with the riot gear, and the crowd was there was more media than crowd, and then there was more police than media that was present at this. But I think a lot of people were scared off from even attending the rally. I had, even my own followers were telling me like, don't go, it's a setup. I'm like, I'm going to go, I'm going to report what's going on. But I like, it wasn't an insurrection. If it was, if I'm for, I don't agree what's going on with their government right now. So, should we be acting in 1776? Like, if we need to make sure the government fears us. And I'm not saying that in like a threatening way. So any feds who are watching or listening to us right now, I'm not evoking any call for violence. That's not what I'm talking about. But the government gets its power from the people, and that's why the Second Amendment is what it is, and needs to hold its ground because it protects all of the other amendments. I don't think that we're going to have another January 6th from what it's being presented in the media to be. I think that there are lessons to be learned from that day, from definitely from the patriot conservative standpoint of we got to be smarter if we're going to be moving forward, we and how we're actually going to be addressing fixing the issues that are impacting us from election integrity and censorship. Like we got to be smart and organized about it because the left is very organized, and that's what we need to be. But just to answer your question, I don't think we're going to see another January 6th as it's presented by the media to have been.
Yeah. You were at January 6th, right? I was
Mhm.
there. I think I ran into you that night or the
Yes.
following night at Harry's.
Yes.
Where were you during the Capitol event?
I was outside, and what I saw, I actually got there a little bit after the Capitol had been stormed, but at the point that I got there, I smelt the gas in the air. And I came around from the back of the Capitol building to the front, and then um walked towards Trump Trump Towers. And so I was in that vicinity. So what was I just saw a huge, so I saw so many people. I saw people on the scaffolds. I saw everybody waving flags and gathering. I didn't witness any of the violence that has been alleged to have happened on that day. And then even when I saw the initial like reports that were coming out from it was different from the vibe that I even had when I was there. So, and as we can see, as more information is coming out, um, all the lies that we've been told about that from the media, it was a very different vibe of actually being there and being with the people. It was again like not this insurrection that it's being presented to be.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. There were mindless people that caught up in the mob,
Mhm.
and
And I do
were
believe
acting
that
like idiots.
there were definitely some instigators. I saw, for example, John Sullivan, the footage that he had put out there, encouraging people to be going in, and then also the day before, showing that he was dressed up as a Trump supporter and saying that, to like, uh, uh, something about chuds, that
It's
he
crazy.
had also posted. So there were definitely some
Yeah, I didn't know,
provocateurs
but
that were there.
he was staying in the same hotel as me. The night of J6, I got freaked out because they came around to a bunch of hotels and like they had like 30, 40, 50 police and they were like pushing people into the hotel like you couldn't even stand on the patio and they
Mm-hmm.
were like locking us in and John Sullivan's in the hotel lobby of my video where I'm like, what? What are they doing? Why are they locking us in here? And he stayed at my hotel.
I was the one who filmed his arrest, actually, in front
Yeah.
of the Hamilton Hotel, because I was with a buddy who contacted him to have a conversation, and so they met in front of the Hamilton Hotel, and I was across the street, um, um, uh, watching and recording from across the street. And
Nice.
then when the police showed up, that's when I crossed the street and just filmed what was going on. I'm like, whoa, the police are here. And yeah, he was then arrested, by Metro PD at that point. And like, for him, he's definitely a agent provocateur that was there. And as I've recollected and watched back on some of the footage, like there were others that were definitely present. And that the important thing of talking to everybody, to get the different perspectives, because it's like piecing together a puzzle. So another puzzle piece I kind of put together was, the feds had contacted me about January 6th and about stuff I've said on my media, and they knew I wasn't one of the people that went inside, and the person that I was being accused of being that had gone inside had also been arrested prior to them even contacting me. So
Mm.
they knew that, because they said, oh, we got a lot of reports that you went inside, but we know you didn't go inside. And then I'm like, all right, if you already know that, then what is the purpose of this conversation?
Yeah.
And so, because I was monitoring, the Fed website of who was being arrested, and I know who that I was being accused of being this one girl that was there, because one of my best friends had thought she was me as well, and he was like, "I thought you said you didn't go inside." I'm like, I'm horrified, like I'm so worried for you, and so I was like, I was stunned that one of my best friends thought this person was me. So I went along with it. I'm like, yeah, just keep it, keep it to yourself. Don't worry about it. But so he had even confused me of being this person.
Wow.
So I knew that people who would be reporting would love it for me to be this person. And she's the one who actually took it, the Nancy Pelosi sign. There's photos of her out there holding a broken Nancy Pelosi sign. And so when I was in New York and I was interviewing around, I was just doing ground streaming from Times Square and just talking to people about Antifa. And a person that he's a bicycle cabbie, he started talking to me. He's like, "Well, I can tell you about Antifa," and I'm like, all right, tell me about what you know. He's like, they're always in Central Park. They pretend to be, they pretend to be about the community, but if if you're not one of them, they will intimidate you. Like, he's like, the best thing to do is not to approach them. They'll become violent, and they'll verbally attack you. They verbally attacked me. Like, at one time, the whole crowd got against me when I was just asking for food, because they were handing out food in Central Park. And then they became upset that I was a Christian. So he's like, I got on my knees, and I was in, because I was surrounded by this crowd, but they eventually let me go. And so I was like, well, that's a horrifying experience. And he goes, you know how you can identify them in a crowd? He goes, they wear red bandanas on their wrists. And I'm like, this was like kind of a new fact that I'd never heard of. And then so I started looking for that. And the girl that I was being accused of being, she has a red scarf on her wrist when she's holding the Nancy Pelosi sign. She has a red scarf on her. And
Hmm.
so I'm like, now I start looking for when people are, dressed in plain clothes, but want to identify, like, whether it be their shoelaces. Sometimes they use their shoelaces and this red scarf. So in my mind, I can't verify if she's an agent provocateur, but why else would you be wearing a red handkerchief around your wrist? It's not exactly fashionable. So possibly was she Antifa? Possibly. I mean, like if she's in a sense doing something that's destructive by having the sign, if she broke it or not, but she didn't just walk in and take a selfie like the rest of the patriots that got ushered in did. She actually did some sort of action there. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I learned from just doing ground conversations and talking to people and piecing together the pieces. So
like one thing that like you express not intentionally about this is that like this fear of like, oh, did I do something that was wrong and I didn't know it was wrong? Like if you or I had went into the Capitol in the role that we've been doing, it would have been perfectly legal and perfectly fine. There are people that do the same kind of stuff that we do that wouldn't have been legal to do it because they provoke things and they do it for entertainment and they're not really documenting. But there's a handful of that have a track record of like, sure, we'll give our opinion, but we're showing like the people like what is happening. And so them trying to intimidate us and trying to make us fear like, oh, did I do something? Could I get arrested for something like technical that I didn't know? And that is messed up. Mm-hmm. And I've been contacted by the FBI too. And I have a hard and fast line. The first time they contacted me, they were fucking with my head and they were pretending not to know things. They pretended not to know who I was. And like, okay, if you don't know who I am, why are you contacting me? Like, you've got to know a little bit about me. Like, how'd you get my phone number?
Yeah, they called my cell. So
yeah. And so like I decided really fast, like not talking to those guys. They're gonna fuck with my head. They're not on my team. Like not talking to those guys. I will not have anything to do with the federal government. I don't trust them. There's too many weird, shady crap going on right now. Like I don't see why any rational person would willfully have a conversation with them.
The purpose of them even contacting me on that day, like it is for intimidation, 100%, because like they told me I didn't do anything wrong, but then the line of questioning, they asked me about stuff that I had said on my channel. They asked me about what I meant by stop the steal. They asked me about what, you have to fight like hell for your country. Like those phrases that are on the patriot side that are conservative, that our freedom of speech. This is deteriorating at our freedom of speech by then making these phrases, labeling them as an incitement, because like incitement then is separated, of course, from a legal perspective of what can be considered freedom of speech and what's not. And so now we're really blurring the lines of making common words that everybody has said. Every politician, left or right, conservative or liberal, have always said you need to fight for your country. But because now that's a phrase that that President Trump had used, that is now demonized to be meaning a form of incitement, which when they make it a form of incitement can be used against you in this court of law. But
which is ludicrous, mm-hmm. because the left mm-hmm. will flat out say like we need to hurt these people, we mm-hmm. need to attack them, we need to assault them, we need to kill them. Maxine Waters told people to go out and physically fight people in the street.
I just was thinking of that because like I've been watching the Potter trial right now. And when Maxine Waters had shown up at Brooklyn Center and she had after she made her speech in front of Brooklyn Center, like the National Guard was attacked that night. So she explicitly calls for acts of violence on people, telling people to become confrontational. If you see, giving instructions, if you see these people in restaurants, you go up to them, you confront them. She's actually explicitly calling for acts of violence on people. Yeah. So, but that's not then labeled as incitement. That's just freedom of speech. But when you have common phrases that everybody says to fight for your country, that's then being demonized. And so like the purpose of the FBI contacting me on that day, knowing that I didn't go inside, so therefore they're not looking for me from that capacity, is to be intimidating me from my freedom of speech, because it does make you question like, oh, because I'm a big goody two shoes. and so that would like, so, and I'm a law abiding citizen. So that will make me question like, oh, did I do something that was against the, against the law? And so now I'm learning more as I've been growing so much really as a person that before I would be just compliant because it was the rules. But now I'm questioning what the rules are and whether or not who put that rule in place, because that the rule that's in place or the law that's in place might not necessarily be right. So we shouldn't be compliant, like a mandate, these mandates that are going on, like we have to look to the purpose behind the rules, and it's okay to break the rules. My dad has always told me, if you get arrested, we'll deal with it. Just don't get hurt. It would be my dad's advice, because yeah, sometimes you're going to act in ways that are not going to be a law-abiding citizen, but it's the right thing to be doing. So we'll handle that in that capacity. Always live your life by doing what is right and never hurt people. But so if you get arrested, we'll deal with you being arrested, but just don't get hurt. And so that we have to be questioning what the rules are and not complying to what they are when we have decided for ourselves this is wrong.
Yeah. Let me steer the conversation away from the details of current events and that sort of thing right now, and get to know you a little bit more. What about your dad? You're kind of like a daddy's girl. You seem like
100%.
you have a very close relationship with him, and he with you. You mentioned that you guys used to be Democrat. I think you were saying that
Yes.
about your father too, and I have a hard time believing that, because this guy
Yeah.
seems like he is like been in like a card carrying member of the Republican Party since he was 7 years old. Like,
So my dad is a communist refugee. So
yeah.
he had fled from Poland during communism when
Let
he
me
was.
pause for just a second.
Mhm.
I actually had a conversation with I can't remember where it was or the details of it. It's very vague, but Antifa was accosting me,
Mhm.
and I was having a conversation, and they had mentioned that, like, you know how they like try to make you like guilty by associating with somebody,
Yes.
and they some reason you were on their radar, and like, oh, you talked to Tara, how do you say your last name?
Szczepanski.
Kapansky, kind of
Yeah.
like Kelly Kapowski a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were like accusing me of being like a Nazi for having
Mhm.
associated with you, and they literally and they really seemed to believe what they were saying.
Yeah.
They were saying that you were part of the Polish American Brotherhood,
Yeah.
and in their mind, it was an international like white supremacist gang that was like in several countries across the world.
It's so
And
funny.
like I had never thought about it before, and I had never looked into it. So like I really like check myself, because like I don't really know what the truth of this is, but I'm pretty sure it's just a name she made up because her father and her background, and it has nothing to do with anything. And but they were Antifa is convinced that you are like the poster,
I'm
the
posted
front
the face
person
of this
for this
white.
neo-Nazi group. Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's terror. The Polish American Brotherhood's here. I'm like, hey guys, how you doing?
And then I tried to even push back against it, and I was like, um, I don't know exactly what her ethnicity is, but she looks like she's got a little bit of Asian in her. Do you find any like weirdness to where you're accusing this person of being an Aryan master race, and they're clearly at least a little bit Asian? Like, nothing bothers you about that conclusion that you're
See,
making up?
that's you're asking them to apply common sense, which when you're Antifa, they don't really have that in a skill set. That's not a value of theirs. So yes, they were not applying some common sense and you just look at the person you're accusing of being this Aryan white supremacist. They're not gonna
So
be like, oh,
just
this
just to
is
be
Asian
clear,
girl
and
right here.
like completely above board, are you like an Aryan supremacist?
To set the record straight, no, we're
What's
not
funny
a. It's not
is
an
this
Aryan.
mask. They accuse me of being that because I like to wear this mask. Well, what's funny is Antifa was the ones that first started wearing this mask, and then some like white nationalists like wore it as a troll on them, and then all of a sudden, like, I'm a Nazi because I wear the skull mask.
That's hilarious. Like, yeah, exactly. It's whatever they want to call it, and therefore it shall be. Because it's not about the merits behind or the actual like truth. It's about whatever they want to make it to be. So they were like, uh, when Mintifa was coming after me, they're like, she's part of the Polish American Brotherhood. I'm like, just by saying that, saying she's part of the Polish American Brotherhood, like that should instantly cause like yeah like don't protect her, she's a Nazi, she's part of the Polish American Brotherhood. Just by looking at me you should be able to be like nah. But it's the background actually of Polish American Brotherhood is about it's the name of my channel. It's the screen names I go by, and it was named specifically because it's about the relationship between Poland and America. I'm half Polish. I'm a Polish citizen, a dual citizen with American. I am Filipino also, so that's where I got my little Asian kick in there. But yeah, so because my channel originated as a history channel between Poland and America, the relationship between Tadeusz Kościuszko, who's an American Revolutionary War hero, the general that also fought alongside General George Washington. So it's the history between them as brothers, because Poland and America are brothers in arms from the Revolutionary War days. And then so when BLM had vandalized the Kosciuszko statue that's in front of the White House, I spoke up I spoke up defending the statue, and also that's when I called BLM a domestic terrorist organization. This was probably 2 days after Floyd's death, so everyone was like all up in arms about it. But yeah, so I stood up for the legacy of Kosciuszko because he fought for the freedoms that we enjoy in today's society. He fought for the liberties of all people. And so when I saw all the destruction and the attacks that were being made on history, this is just like reminiscent of how communism really takes root into society when they go after, because you need to disrupt society first, take away its foundations, make it so that you are not proud of your history. Like I was listening to NPR earlier, and they even said how the Robert E. Lee statue that they had removed earlier this year, they were going to be melting it down to make it another form of public art. So I disagree with that. I disagree with the destruction of statues and monuments, because I think those are things that need to be preserved and put into museums if it's no longer, in a sense, popular for the time period that it was out there, because times do change, but it needs to be preserved so we always remember what our history is.
The Robert E. Lee statue is even worse than that. There are several organizations that volunteered to pay very, very large sums of money to purchase that statue to keep it as history. And they chose not to take the money and to give it to BLM to melt down.
Mm-hmm. It's about erasing our past and our history.
Yeah, it's iconoclasm. It happens every time one culture takes over another culture. They go through and they destroy the statues. It's like it's literally 1984.
When
I have these conversations, I feel so crazy because
when they burn down the libraries.
You're saying things that make so much sense, and I look at things and I come to the conclusions, some of the conclusions that you're saying, like, oh, they're trying to degrade your ancestry, they're trying to erase history, they're trying to erase the statues, and like I'm looking at these things and logically, like, okay, these things have happened in this culture and in this time period, and they've had again and again and again, and it looks like that same thing is happening again right now. But there's so many people that won't just look at it and like make a rational connection and connect the dots, that they won't even look at it. So they're like, oh, society is safe. You're expressing an extreme idea that says that society is not safe. So you're crazy. But I'm like, no, this, and this. They're like, we won't hear it. And it makes me feel crazy. It makes me feel like I'm the like
they're gaslighting you. They're trying to conspiracy theorist. They're trying to make you question yourself.
It's like I've got a cowlick and I'm jumping up and down really loud and like I'm telling everybody about the gay frogs and like and like no, I'm not Alex Jones. Like I'm nowhere near that. But like, can we just have a conversation about this? If I am crazy, if these things that I'm connecting are loose associations, can we have a conversation about it? And you show me why it doesn't make sense, or why these aren't good connections, and why I'm not making good conclusions. Can we have a conversation about it? Because
well, then if they actually had a conversation with you, then they'd actually have to win on the merits of that conversation and win on good points. So they know that they can't win on those points. So instead they go with the ad hominem attack, paint you as crazy or your references as crazy or as a white supremacist, or that they're racist, and all the isms. Because once you label a person and get that label to stick, anything that they're going to say, you've taken the value out of them. Nobody's going to listen to a crazy person. So they want to like make you crazy. So like even when they attack me for being a Nazi, like they want to paint me as a Nazi and a white supremacist. So that way, anything that I'm saying right now, like you're saying what I'm saying is logical, but if I'm painted as a Nazi or a white supremacist, then there will be no value to the words that I have. And so that's why they go after us as people and not the points of the conversation. But yeah, that's exactly it's and the history is repeating itself. And then with my father's my father's experience coming from communism, I was brought up learning about communism, what life is like under communism. I just came back from Poland about a month or two ago, and then from there I was always visiting the various museums where his history is stored. Like if another culture or prevailing thought, basically ideology is coming in, they're going to want to destroy the remnants of that history. That's why they're going after the statues. That's why societies will go and burn down libraries. All the written history, they get rid of that written history, because when you don't have that history, you can fall for anything. We have one generation that has a collective memory of what happened, but then by the next generation, that's going to be gone. So that's when you can have a new ideology that comes in. But yeah, it's like the origin of calling myself the Polish American Brotherhood. It's the name of my channel, and it's because of Tadeusz Kościuszko and General George Washington. And so when I moved forward with my like, so if you look at my channel, my earliest videos is top 10 facts about Poland, facts about Kosciuszko, facts about Poland in America, and Chopin, things to do when visiting Poland. And so that was the initial premise of my channel. And then I pivoted from doing history to doing history in the making, because I saw what was going on. And that's why I think that's the importance of citizen journalism, is whatever platform you have, whether it's, just even on your private Facebook page or anything, you should be using that platform as a speaking tool, because there are people going to be listening to you, and you should be using that platform to be spreading the truth. We have to combat this propaganda that's out there, and combat the lies that we're being told by the mainstream media. And that's when, how we're going to do that is when regular citizens stand up and say, I'm not okay with this. And they use what they have in their resources to stand up and fight against that. And that's exactly what I did.
You live in Florida right now, correct?
Yes.
And stop me if we get to too many details that you don't want on the internet. What part of Florida do you live in?
I'm in
I
Central
don't know
Florida.
if you know, but I'm a big fan of Florida.
Yeah. Florida's great. DeSantis, I am
Central
so
Florida?
happy to be, I get back to Florida and I'm like, freedom, because I split a lot of time in New York. I was probably based in New York about half of this year was spent in New York. And so it's such a contrast from New York to here. So it's like
Yeah.
it's that scene from it was like The Babysitter, when with Vin Diesel, I think, when he's driving the car crazy and the girl jumps out of the car and she's like, land. That's me when I get to Florida. I'm like, I touch down on the plane and I'm like, freedom.
So Central Florida, I don't know Florida too much. I've been there a couple times. Like I want to find a life where I get to go live in Florida and poke and like harass alligators. Um, so are you close to Lakeland?
I'm pretty close to Lakeland. Yeah, yeah. It's probably an hour and a half away. But I have friends in Lakeland. I've gone there like a couple of times. It's
But
it's on the way to Tampa.
isn't almost everything in Florida an hour and a half away?
That's not true. Florida's a huge state. You can drive for 12 hours in Florida and still be in Florida, from all the way at the point of Key West to
Yeah.
Tallahassee. That's 12 hours. Like that's halfway from where I am now to New York. So Florida's a huge, huge, huge state. Yeah. And I'm very thankful that I live here and I can see such a contrast in terms of not having to deal with the mandates that are all over New York versus here. But I've been going to several of the school board meetings here in Florida, and I realize how even delicate those freedoms are, because at these school board meetings, they'll be putting up for votes for
Oh, I lost you. Connection disappeared. Hope you come back in a moment.
mask mandates, for instance. Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, you're back.
All right. So I've been going to school board meetings here in Florida, and with that, they'll be putting up for votes for mask mandates. And there was even talk about vaccinations for kids, and that these conversations and these votes that are even occurring when I thought like, oh, Florida's safe, but when you go to these battleground places like school board meetings, a lot goes on in school board meetings. So I encourage everybody to be checking out your local school board meetings. But even in Florida, where we think our freedoms are protected and just out there for us to enjoy, those are even delicate. So that's the importance of rallying and protesting, in a sense, freedom rallies. Like it's important to have them even here in Florida, even though we have freedom, because the moment that you stop, freedom is something that needs to be nurtured and maintained. Because if you don't, people take that away. Like the instant you take your eyes off of our liberties, the government will overstep, and we need to recognize what even micro over like those little steps that they're going at for freedoms. If the government doesn't have the if it's not in their purview of responsibilities, they should not be touching it at all, no matter how small it is, because it starts with an inch and then they take a mile. If we don't go to school board meetings, if we don't actively have freedom protests, even in states like Florida, that's when Florida will end up becoming New York.
My stance on school board meetings at this point, I don't have kids, so take that for what you will, audience. But uh, if you have kids and you're having a problem with the school boards at this point, you're worried about your kids in school, like that's on you at this point. If you're not homeschooling your kids at this point, like anywhere in the country, they're teaching kids sodomy in like elementary school.
Mhm.
Like I they're
Very true. The
they're
books that are in
giving
the
the
libraries.
vaccination and abortion to kids and telling them not to tell their parents and keeping stuff like that. They're they're letting kids take the opposite gender ideology at school and take a different name and keeping it hidden from their parents. This is not some tinfoil hat, like some extreme fringe thing that's happening in one little county in the country. This is happening all over the country, and not even just in the US, all over the Western world. Like there's more and more people getting more and more bold with their collectivism ideas, communist ideas, and they're writing articles saying like, are kids a an asset of the state or do they
Mhm.
belong to the family? And like
Mhm.
just the fact that people are openly having these conversations, and they're not conversations, they're making these proclamations on these big platforms. Like if you have kids and you've got them in public school, I look down on you. Like I don't care. That sounds harsh, but like yeah,
No, well, I'm with you there. I don't have kids yet, but like I already planned on homeschooling my kids. But absolutely, the stuff that's going on and what's allowed to be going on in our schools, like when they are trying to make it's all comes down to the deconstruction of the family unit. And so I think of, for example, when Pol Pot rose to power in the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, which eventually led to the genocide of a third of the country. It was when you break those family ties, that you don't have allegiance to your siblings or to your parents. Your father is Angkor. The Angkor will take care of you. It's Angkor is what they would call the government, in Khmer, during the Khmer Rouge. Like your father, your mother is the government. It is they've removed that family ties, and with that, like that's how you have people reporting on, like turn in your neighbor, turn in
yeah,
your family. And so that's all things that happen in communism, because they don't have a value to that family tie, because they've removed the value of
yeah.
those relationships.
I don't know
And
how many.
you prioritize the government over your own parents.
Yeah, it's they're. they're making the structure of society different. Instead of the spokes being between the members of the family, they're everybody's an individual, and the spoke is connected to the government, which is an abstract, made-up entity. I don't know how many times you've had the chance to have genuine conversations with Antifa, but almost, I won't make that claim. Regularly, when I've had the chance to talk to Antifa, they talk about they've had seriously broken homes and dysfunctional childhoods and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So have I. And but even more so is a regular thing when I talk to female Antifa is that their anger at their fathers. And I don't know the details and the patterns of the relationships of their fathers and how those mash up, but I do know the patterns of what they say. And they express anger at their father for holding a different worldview than them. And they'll call their father racist or bigoted or conservative, and they'll treat conservative as though it's just equal to those other words. And eh, they've literally gotten like daughters to turn against their fathers just for a political belief. Like
Yeah,
seriously,
that's
like
an actual cult.
your parent is less valuable to you than a political belief. It's crazy. Like the value of the family connection is like
It,
valuable
yeah, it's a
for
bond
lack
that
of a
should
better
not,
word.
it's a bond that should not be broken, that
Yeah,
cannot be broken, but they're finding ways to chisel at it so that way it becomes pop
yeah.
culture and our cultural norm that over time it deteriorates at that family at that family unit at
I
our
agree. Like if your parents were Nazis, like we'll both agree that we think that Nazis are actually a bad thing. But I'm saying that like the reality of human life is that if your parents were Nazis, your relationship to your mother and father is more valuable than your disagreements with them in their political or like their evil ideology. Like you should value your relationship with your mother and your father more than the fact that like they might be a Nazi. That's the truth. And the
Mhm.
others, and it sounds horrible, and I can't even articulate it right without making myself sound crazy and evil. But that's the truth. And the other side is winning the PR argument, and they're like, no, Nazis the worst thing in the world. And if your parents are Nazis or anybody's accused in your family of being Nazis, you have to disassociate from them. But that's the wrong thing. That's
Mhm.
the wrong thing. Like, no, you you be you keep the family tie before you divide over political things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And because I mean it's specifically targeting the delusion uh taking away these family ties, dissolution of them in order to make you allegiant then to this ideology or the government or that's when it's a genuine cult. They like to throw around that word also, calling us members of a cult. But when even their acts of violence that they do, it's almost like initiation strategies because like it's like digging in deep. Like when you if you join a gang, then you have to go commit a crime. And they're getting you in deep, and then it makes you, you know, part of that group. Because like we're social creatures that want to belong. So that's why it almost sounds like the Antifa is like this group of misfits who don't belong there. And then the same psychology that exists there is why we would have some people running off to join ISIS.
That's weird. You see more and more like middle class white people from comfortable countries flying overseas to join ISIS. That's weird. Tell
Mm-hmm.
me, tell me something on a lighter note. What do you do in Florida for fun? Tell me about awesome
Uh,
Florida stuff.
awesome Florida stuff. I have not spent very much time in Florida this past like for the last like 4 years. I lived in New York for about 8 years when I was doing management consulting, and I was an expert in healthcare for my old company. And so I was there for almost like 8 years. And when I quit my corporate life, I took off backpacking and traveling and staying at hostels and meeting everybody from all around the world. I've gone to 58 countries now. And I loved my backpacking life, which came to a halt because of COVID. But I think that that that's also led me to where I am today, with also now traveling so much around the US. It's with doing guerrilla journalism, it combines both my passions of wanting to do something. I see a huge, like, there's a purpose. I find a huge importance and purpose to the work that I'm doing now with this, and it combines it with also I would say I'm definitely an adrenaline junkie from when I would be going, or when I used to be backpacking. I was one of my favorite things to do would be like riding around on motorbikes in Southeast Asia. Like when I was in Vietnam, I had the coastline, the beach coastline on one side, and had the mountains on the other. When I was going from Hoi An to Hui, which was a 3 hour motorbike ride, and I used to do canyoneering. I
I'm getting a
was
little bit different perspective on you right now because, like, I'm having a hard time picturing you like a world backpacker because you kind of seem like an indoor girl. You like you seem like you like showers and like clean clothes and do your makeup
I
and
think
stuff.
the longest I went without a shower was probably 4 or 5 days when I was in the Komodo Islands. I was on a boat cruise that went from the Komodo Islands to Lombok. The I was on definitely the cheapest boat that I could get. So I was like, I don't really want to go inside of that shower, which was fine. I was swimming every day, so I'm like, all right, I don't smell, I guess. But yeah, I've done canyoning, skydiving. Um, I have a lot of fun doing that, and I love the budget traveling. In a sense, like I think that in whatever your budget is, you can still go and travel on it. Like I'd be staying at $2, $3 hostels sometimes to really stretch it out to be going to being out there. And I think the lowest like budget month I'd even gone on was like probably like $25 a day. Um, and I think it's just important to be going out there and traveling. And one of the things I reflect on is I'm so glad that I had taken the time to travel and to have a gap year, because even when I was very much into my corporate life and career, and I was advancing fast, I had just made manager in a short period of time, and it was never going to be a good time in my life to take in a sense, a gap year or a break. But I decided to, even though I had just gotten promoted. Because fast forward, 2.5 years later, COVID hit. And now that I think that's forever going to be changing traveling, at least in my lifetime, that I'm just so thankful that I took the time back then, because that's not going to be really an option now, especially with vaccine passports being a thing. Like you can't go to Canada. If you're not vaccinated, you can't go to Canada. A lot of countries are like that. So, uh, for me, I'm like, oh, well, I've already been there. But there's a lot of people, of course, who
I don't
haven't.
think we're gonna
So
be able to travel between the states here pretty soon.
yeah, if we that's why we got to keep fighting for our freedoms. I remember even when Biden was saying how to close off travel from Florida, because Florida has different politics than you
Right.
guys. But yeah, that's true. It's forever changing traveling. But so in terms of activities here in Florida, I mean, there's a lot of nature stuff to be doing. A daily life for me, I'm enjoying being home because I'm going to Pilates like every day. I take my reformer classes. I love Pilates. Um, I my other gym is I have a rock climbing gym that I go to as well here. So I'm enjoying my being back into a kind of a routine, being able to go to my rock climbing gym, being able to going to my Pilates classes. If I do stay put here for a while, which I've been working on my studio a lot because I want to do in studio stuff. There's a boxing gym that I'm looking forward to joining as well, because I don't like to do like kickboxing, as in like Taibo or title kickboxing. I like boxing. I was in a fighting camp in the Philippines for about 4.5 months, and I did boxing there. And then when I was in Thailand, I trained at a Muay Thai camp, um, also for a month there. And so I love physical fitness. I am a fighter. And so when I was abroad, one of my favorite things to be doing was just staying at training camps and fighting and sparring. So I've got actually in my studio, I've got my boxing bag here. So if I, get mad at the news, I can take it out of my boxing bag. And then when I have friends come over, I'm like, hey, do you want to spar? And then I have all the headgear and everything. I'm like, let's duke it out.
Let me ask you, you said that you used to be a liberal,
Yes.
and you seem like you would probably be described as a hardcore conservative now. Is that true?
I guess I'd agree with that. My response to that would be my values as a person has never changed. Like my stances and position in being pro-life or separation of how I see the role of government. It's just my view of the world is what's changed. And then also understanding things beyond the labels. And because before it'd be just like I wasn't paying attention very much to what was going on. I just assumed that the Democrats were the good guys. I thought we were the ones who were helping the people. And so that's what I assumed the Democratic Party was. So I just voted down the lines. But now that I have actually been listening to other people, and after more people attack me, is what really made me realize that I was a conservative. It's not a title that or a label that I had on myself, but now it's something that I identify with just after really understanding what the true meaning is. In terms of like a political spectrum, I would say I was probably in the middle. And so, and not radical, but then when my middle ground thoughts or ideas were then met with such disdain, being told not to have an opinion and told to shut up. I'm like, since when can I not have an opinion? And so that's what red pilled me and made me realize what was actually going on and turned me to being as vocal as I am.
Let me ask you some questions on provocative and taboo topics.
Yeah.
I want to touch on feminism and sexuality here.
All right.
So you said that before you were trying to climb the corporate ladder, and that you were succeeding in that. What do you feel about that today? Do you think that that's a valuable endeavor or an appropriate course of action for a young woman?
I think women should have stopped after the 19th Amendment. Just kidding, but kind of serious about that a little bit. Oh, it's too much from what's going on now. I think that it's good to have your job, career, and other passions outside of the home and the family, but the way that it's been conditioned to
Why do you think that's good?
The way that why
I'll
it's
be
too
totally
much,
upfront with
or
you. I think that the 19th Amendment was one of the worst things that's ever happened to the Western world. I don't think women should
I
vote.
hear you. I hear you. As a woman,
It's not
I
because
like
I
being
don't
able to vote,
value
but
women or don't think
yeah,
that they're capable.
but it's the union.
It's just what happens to society and what happens to the family unit when
Yeah,
it just
there's an impact to the family unit because the origins of that is that the husband and wife were supposed to be making a joint decision for it, and so that was a step away from making a joint decision and women becoming independent. And then when I say independent, it's not in the sense of like, oh, I can do everything on my own. Like, sure you can, but now it's so much that you're not willing to recognize what's actually good and productive for a family, for togetherness, because people are now like anti that. And they're against having a family because now having a family is counter to having a career. And that's when I say it's too much, because a family should not be seen as being counter to a career. It should, if a woman gets married and has children at 25 or 24, some people are like, oh, you've thrown your life away. But that's the attitude people are having, and that shouldn't be the case. Like, you shouldn't be seen as throwing your life away by choosing to have a family at whatever point that you want. You should balance it like whatever best you can, but you should be making decisions that function together. And when you're making decisions that advance you independently, then you could be hurting the family as a unit. And so it's a given. In order to stay together, of course it's going to be a give and a take, but when you act completely independent, it's not give and take. And that's what's happening to a lot in our society. And that's why we have a lot of fatherless like households, and then that ultimately has led to a lot of the crime that we have, kids growing up without fathers in the household, and women thinking that like, oh, I'm better off not even having a man. Like, it's an asset. The greatest privilege that we have in today's society is to have both a father and a mother in our lives, and that people aren't recognizing that, because now it's clown world. It's opposite that, but that runs counter to keeping everything together. So like to your point about the 19th Amendment, it took away from people making decisions together, because it says you're going to act completely independent. And now down the line, this third wave feminism, I think it's too much when a woman is not being, is being against even having a family, and that's
I
counter
don't
to
think that's the
everything.
way it was. It wasn't making decisions together. It was the man was the head of the household. The man made those decisions. It wasn't before the 19th Amendment. It wasn't this idea that they were making things together, and then the vote for women allowed them to make their decisions separate from the man. Um, the man made the decision before.
I hear you. Like
I'm hardcore against feminism. I think it's infected so much stuff. Let me ask you this. Um, I don't think that homosexuality like aligns with conservatism.
mhm,
I think they're antithetical to each other. And
mhm,
so they're and I'm libertarian on some things, to where I think that if you're a homosexual man and you're not hurting other people, like do your own thing. Do not take that shit into the school system. Do
mhm,
not push it on people. Don't try to get the government to give you special rights and special privileges. Just like do
mhm.
your thing and let it be in your closet or your house or whatever. Um, but I'm more and more like weirded out by like why we're having so many homosexual men, like openly homosexual men, as leaders in the conservative movement, like Dave Rubin,
Mhm.
Douglas Murray, or like why at Donald Trump rallies, which is mostly evangelical Christians that are hardcore, like Bible thumping Christians, like why are they having like flamboyant homosexual men do a dance to YMCA and to the village people? And like, why is nobody saying this doesn't, these aren't the same things?
Yeah.
These two things don't match. Like, why is this being overlooked? Like, why are you going to a Trump parade and there's a group of guys having like rainbow flags and dressed in high heels and like saying like why um, you should be a Republican? I was like, no, 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 no. If you're a man and you came to a public event in high heels, you're not a conservative. Like that
Mhm.
doesn't match. I'm not saying that people shouldn't have the right to live their private lives according to their own desires, as long as they're not hurting each other. But once they start promoting those things
Mhm.
and trying to like be the leaders of a movement, I don't get why people are giving that a pass. I do.
Yeah.
Like the biggest thing was that like that YMCA float that went around to all the Trump rallies.
Yeah, I
What the
remember
hell
that
was
one.
that? What was that?
Yeah, like I was at a Patriot rally in California, and there was a guy dressed in heels with the gay pride flag, and to me it's just like a non-issue in a
Oh yeah,
sense of
Mario guy,
like,
right?
because yeah. It's just it's non-issue. Like, to me, it plays into identity politics, and I don't think we should be judging people based on your sexuality or your gender or your race or any of it, because none of that matters. None of that tells to me there are good and bad people in the world. That's it. It's it and you, how you are, race, religion, sexuality, and any of that is meaningless to me. And I remember actually the part of my mindset before, when I was a liberal, was going was in a sense like being, oh, I'm Asian, so a lot of my identity was coming from like being Asian. And there's a difference between celebrating culture, because we all should be celebrating, the beauty of culture, food, travel, all of that. I'm not saying that, but it's not an achievement. It's so when they have in our elected office, or not appointed offices in Biden's administration, for instance, the first gay transportation
The
office, or the
token Pete Buttigieg.
yeah, him, Mayor Pete. And then also for the Department of Health, the first trans person to be
The first
our
cross-dressing man to be in
yeah,
the
because to me these are just who you are, which is all fine and dandy, but that's not a resume point. That doesn't make you more qualified for a position. It doesn't make you less qualified for the position. It's a non-issue. Like it's nothing that you should even make it onto your resume. Your achievements and your resume points need to speak on its own without having your identity politics. So those should be non-issues. So it doesn't have a place even in terms of like LGBT being counter to just the basic values of conservatism. Like that's that, but also we as a party shouldn't be leading with any kind of form of identity politics, because it is then saying that it's an achievement to be a certain way. And now we see as a society, those are like brownie points, or like when you're the first Asian to be doing something, like, or the first woman to be doing something. I don't know. I don't really care about that anymore. And I used to think like, oh, if I'm gonna, Barack Obama, the first Black president, like I don't care about that, as long as you're the right person for the job, which he clearly wasn't. When I voted for Obama, I voted for him because he was Black. And now I understand. I'm like, actually, what I did there was I was judging him by the colors of his skin, and not the content of his character. And so I realized in hindsight how wrong that was, and especially the ramifications that have come forward from having him as a president. But that really plays into what our culture is by leading with these identity politics, and we need to cut that crap out.
I've got to take a quick break. Are you good to take a break and keep going?
Yeah, yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
All right, we're back. I totally agree with what you're saying about the identity politics stuff. And what's weird is another level where I'm seeing the conservative crowd or the Republican crowd give passes on things that seem very illogical to me. I have literally seen many, many, many ads for political candidates that are women running for office. And these women will just bash on identity politics, and they'll say, we don't need to do this. And then they'll say, like, I'm a good candidate for this, and I'm the first woman, or it's time for a woman in office. And like, you just like, why are we letting them get away with that? Like, if you're the good candidate, great. If you need to say that you're the good candidate because you're also a woman, you're not the good candidate.
Exactly. Because I mean, when you're stating like, oh, I'm a woman, I'm for the most part, it used to be obvious, but this day and age, sometimes it's not. But it's not a resume point. It's not a plus. It's not a minus. But I want to, if I like you for a set of characteristics, you can say like, oh, I add value to the office by being able to do this and do that. They might be characteristics that are stronger when it comes to women, because there are definitely differences in characteristics where women are stronger than men, and then men are stronger than women in different things. That's the beauty of our genders though. And having this sounds weird, but the beauty of gender roles, that we're identifying where our strengths and weaknesses are, so we complement each other, because no one person is an island. And so that's how we're able to function in teams together. And so when people are running for office and leading with, I'm the first American or Asian American to be doing this, I'm the first woman to be doing this, I'm like, these and it holds no weight. And now even if I hear it, I feel it's a minus, because then you're writing on this just identity politics, and it shouldn't have a place. Let's judge people by their characteristics and make a decisions based on their merits and not what they present to the world.
I agree. 100%. Tell me more about Florida. You've got like you're talking about the things you did in Florida are things that you could do anywhere in the country, like going to gyms and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's just like my daily life here. Being a normal person and everything. But Florida is an amazing state. It is. It has a lot of national parks. Wekiva Springs is a place I like to go. Also, they have freshwater springs. Now they have a bioluminescent plankton that's been found in some of our rivers, so that's becoming also another popular tourist destination and thing to do is
I've
to be
seen photos of
kayaking.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really cool. The first time I saw a bioluminescent bay was when I was in Puerto Rico, and then when I was in this small island off the coast of Cambodia, called Rong Sam Long. Uh, you could just go swimming in the and it was everywhere in the water. So this is a really unique feature I feel that now it's been discovered here in Florida to have. So come on to see our bioluminescent plankton. And we do have beautiful beaches. That's definitely a selling point, but it's a lot more of a relaxed state. Before I used to think it was, a retirement community or because this is what I had heard, but I guess that was never so much an issue for me. I'm just glad it's home that I can, but that's also part of the reason why I have to travel a lot to do on the ground coverage because you don't have the issues plaguing other places. You don't have those here because of leaders like DeSantis and the mindset of the population that does live here. And so, yeah, I'm thankful to call Florida home.
Yeah, what's weird about Florida is like up until just a couple of years ago, Florida had this like image of being like the crazy zombie people state of the country. And now it's all of a
Yeah, the
sudden
bath
flipped and it's
salts,
like the
the guy that
conservative,
ate the bath
yeah,
salts, I think.
there wasn't just one guy. It was like a repeated thing that was happening. Yeah, but now it's like the conservative freedom land part of the country. It just kind of flipped real quick.
And we got Disney. One of the stereotypes of anybody who like lives in Orlando is that they work at Disney. It's true. I used to work at Disney way back when as also, so it's fun. Disney's
What
my
did you do at
backyard.
Disney?
I was best friends with Mulan. Be true to
Ah.
your heart.
Next, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I want to do next time I go to Florida, but I heard that like up north, northern Florida, there's like some places you can go and there's wild monkeys. Like there's actually monkeys all in the wilderness there.
I don't know much about that, but that's cool. That's cool. I remember when I was in Cambodia and this little baby monkey like climbed up my leg into my shoulder and I was like, oh, this is so cute. But then I got afraid because I'm like, baby monkey means mama monkey's around here somewhere. And I'm like, you got to get off me before she comes to me.
I think we're probably closing down. What is there anything that you want to say about your platform before we shut down and any final thoughts you have?
Villain, thanks so much for having me on your program. And I think what you're doing is fantastic because we're seeing so much of a shutdown of conversations that need to be opened with people of different thoughts who disagree. Uh, because it's too much telling people to shut up as opposed to listening to what they have to say and understanding where our problems are coming from and also allowing the best ideas to rise to the top because there's none of us no one's winning by cheating when you're shutting down the other person you're cheating because you're not going to win on the merits of the conversation you're going to win by slashing their vocal cords basically so I want to thank you for what you're doing and for bringing me onto the program you can find my content on the Polish American Brotherhood on YouTube mainly and then also all my social media handles is Poam Brotherhood for the record, we are not a Aryan white supremacist international Nazi group. When you hear Polish American Brotherhood and they say, that's Tara, she's with the Polish American Brotherhood. Polish American Brotherhood is here. That's me. Hey guys. Thanks, Villain.
Thanks for having me on or for coming on my show and talking to me. I'm trying to get as many different points of views just talking I'm so disturbed by how broadly divided our society is. Uh, I just I just talked to Steve Oatley
Hmm.
a week or two ago on PT News Network, and we were talking about the video that just came out, the body camera, and a lot of people are claiming that like it's clear as day. I saw it in my eyes. This cop is beating Roseanne Boylan's dead body, and I watched the video over and over and over and tried to see from their point of view. I was like, no, that's not what's happening. And I've talked to so many people, and they're just like they're seeing a different video. It's just like, and that's that's like a marker of what's happening in our whole society about everything. It's just
Yeah.
somehow like there was that audio recording that came out a while ago that was really popular, and some people think it said, I can't remember what it says, like green thistle, or and some people heard something else. A couple years ago there's that thing, is the dress blue and white, or is it black and gold? And people like they try to talk to each other and they couldn't see each other's point of view, and they're seeing two different things.
Hmm.
There's something about the human perception,
Yeah.
and there's something happening today to where that phenomena is being separated and becoming a bimodal thing, to where um, people standing right next to each other. I remember this
It's
this
because
is
they're changing the meaning. People have been changing the meaning of words. And so even though
I
we're
don't even
saying
think
the
it's
same
that.
words, where people see different things.
That's that doesn't explain why Steve Oatley would see the video of an officer beating a dead body. And I'm like, no, there's no, he's not beating the dead body. That like words don't have anything to do with that. I remember when I was in filming the riots, when I was, before Antifa started getting on to me as not being one of them. Um, there's this really annoying Portland Antifa girl called Ara, and she
Mhm.
was live streaming too. And I was standing right by her when this infamous incident happened, where this guy started, he took a hammer and he was beating the plywood door that they had made shipped on the Marco Hatfield Federal building, and he was beating the door in with a hammer, and like a bunch of soldiers rush out, and he hits one of them in the helmet with his hammer, and then they maced the hell out of him. Like they maced him for a good 30 seconds, 60 seconds. And Ara is sitting right next to me. We're both seeing the exact same thing. And then she's like, "Can you believe that? Can you believe what they did to him? Can you believe they're assaulting him and treating him that way?" And it's like, "What are you talking about? We're both right here. He literally was hitting officers in the head with a hammer."
Mhm.
It's this whole thing, to where we're coming to this idea that half of the country is right and half of the
Mhm.
country is wrong, and both sides think that.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to be the right perspective, and so I'm just trying to understand the other side, and to get the other side to talk, and to get the sides to talk. So um, hopefully maybe we'll get like a round table here pretty soon. I'll bring you back on and get you to talk like a BLM and an Antifa, and we can get like a Nazi in here, and like get everybody to just have a round table discussion.
I think that'd be a great idea. I miss those days that you can talk to people of different views. Like for the most part, like anybody who thinks differently than me, they have shut me out of their lives. I've lost a lot of friends this past year, or what I thought were friends, but evidently once I had voiced a different opinion than them, I was no longer their friend. But I actually, one of my buddies had sent me a message, and he's like, I said happy Thanksgiving, and he's like, um, happy day of indigenous like slaughter, basically. And I'm
Uh,
like, I was like, I'm so glad that we can be friends, because like we have completely differing views, but we know that we're both good people, even if we have different perspectives of it. And because we don't shut each other down, we're able to learn from each other because of it. And I think that's important to surround yourself, to listen to other people. And choose the company you keep, but to be open to listening to people of different perspectives, because that's when you're going to grow more as a person. And we're stunting, everybody's doing a disservice to themselves and stunting their own growth when they won't even listen to the other side.
I agree. All right. Thank you, Tara, for the conversation.
Thank you, Ellen.
And the villain report is out.